Hello, my name is Zach Manouk. I am here with the Rady Jewish Community Center on behalf of both the Rady JCC and the Gwen Sichter Creative Living Center at Sidglow Place. I have the pleasure of kicking off this week's Familiar Faces Showcase. Before I do that, I do want to pause and recognize the sponsors of our Familiar Faces series, without which none of this would exist. Both the Asper Foundation and the Babs Asper Center of Cultural Arts. It is your ongoing dedication and your commitment to the arts during these dark times of COVID that we are able to bring this type of programming, albeit virtual, to our community and beyond. And there isn't a greater need right now than this kind of programming giving our climate. So thank you to the Asper Foundation, and thank you to the Babs Asper Center of Cultural Arts. Okay, we also want to recognize the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg for your ongoing support of both Gwen Sichter and the Rady JCC. So, on to today's show. Today, I am excited to introduce this week's showcase, something we're calling Ahead of the Curve, the story and the origins of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. If you're a hockey fan here in the city, there's no doubt that you know about the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You've probably been a fan like myself for the last almost probably 10 years plus, and you're very curious to hear about sort of their origins and how they came to be and where they're planning on going with the recent announcement of the change in venue, or the change in radio format, on TSN 1290. Well, today I'm happy to say that we do have one of the original creators, one of the OGs of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with us to shine a light on the history of that radio show, Drew Mindell. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Zach. A pleasure to be here. Really honored that you asked. Obviously a wonderful event and a wonderful opportunity for me to talk about Illegal Curve and really give back a little bit to the community. So really thrilled to be here. Thanks so much.
And thank you, Drew, for taking time. I know, yourself, you do the radio program, but you also have obviously a full-time career outside of that, on top of that, plus you have a young family at home. So to take time out of this, I know myself as well as our audience greatly appreciate this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, before we get into it, I want to make sure that we recognize, your partners that have been part of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, starting with obviously Ezzy Ginsberg, who's been with you since the beginning, Richie Pollock, who was there at the start, and I believe Dave Manouk, distant relative of mine, was there with you as well.
Yeah.
And obviously they're unable to be here with us. Some of them have moved on, but no doubt your success at the Illegal Curve Show, large part to do with those individuals as well.
No question. It's always been a collaborative effort. It's always been a group effort. We've, in all the different iterations of Illegal Curve, there's always been people who've come in and gone and helped us out. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention also Michael Remus was there to help us out. But all credit initially to our founder, Richard Pollock. He's the one who had the brainchild for this idea. I mean, close to 15 years ago now, which is really hard to believe.
Wow.
And that here we are sitting on the stage here talking about it 15 years later. I don't think any of us would have thought what happened then is the reality today.
It's incredible. It's an incredible story. I'm excited to get into it. This is the Familiar Faces series that we are putting on, and we are profiling, members within the Jewish community. And so before we get into sort of the history, I do want to play a little bit of Jewish geography with you, if that's okay, Drew.
Absolutely.
A lot of us here in our Jewish community, they do know about the success stories of you and your buddies that you just mentioned there. Obviously, you're part of the Jewish community. We were talking right before we started filming that, your little ones, they attend the Rady. They do swimming lessons. They attend our day camps. Obviously, a member of the Jewish community. I'm sure that's very important to you.
Absolutely. And I went to school here at the at Gray Academy. For grades 11 and 12 when the Asper campus just opened. And I've always I've been a member of the gym at various times. Clearly not enough as the camera might show. But now that my kids are at the age where we're here, really from the time they were 3 months old, 6 months old. They were in the swimming pool here. They were taking swimming lessons. We'd come on Sunday mornings and, we'd do our thing, and then we'd have lunch. And it was just such a, you could really feel the community environment. And, that's something that may not be as important to you, in your 20s or in your 30s until you get that family. And then once you have a family and you can see your kids be in the same, in the same building that you spent so much time, it really does become more profound and more pronounced. So, the Rady Center, the Asper campus has been such a key key, part of my life for 20 plus years, of course. And now it's so great to see my kids being involved and being active in the programming.
That's great to hear, and I'm sure you probably have some very proud parents as well, just like any sort of Jewish boy in our community, Jewish girl in the community would.
Absolutely. If I don't mention them, I'll never hear the end of it. My parents, of course, Tanis and Sheldon Mindell. Tanis Mindell used to be Tanis Silver. That was her maiden name, and my dad, Sheldon Mindell. My grandparents, of course, they've passed away since, but they were heavily involved in the Jewish community. Doris and Morris Silver and Rose and Joe Mindell, and they always spent time here at the Rady Center since it opened. So yeah, I mean we've got long Winnipeg roots here, and it's really I'm proud that I'm able to continue it with the next generation with my kids.
That's so nice to hear that. It really, really is. Okay, so let's turn back now to the radio program, the Illegal Curve radio show.
Yeah.
And I want to start with doing sort of an introduction as to the genesis of the show, how it began from, I believe it was a website to begin with, to I think it was on college radio, back to then fast forward to when TSN came calling. So I'd love for you to kind of walk us through that and kind of tell us about how that started.
I'd be pleased. So as I mentioned, the founder of Illegal Curve was my friend Richard Pollock. And Richard was attending law school. And you think, okay, you're attending law school, you probably don't want to add anything else to your plate. But Richard, is a hockey fanatic, so he decided he wanted to start a hockey website. And that's what he started with, illegalcurve.com. I think the original address was actually on Blogspot, which is illegalcurve.blogspot.com. So initially, very humble origins, as you might expect. But, Richard did a great job. He said he wanted to be, this is before the Jets were around. This is before there's really any sort of inkling that professional NHL hockey is going to come back to Winnipeg. But he decided he wanted to, venture out into this area, and he started this website. And his philosophy was he wanted to be a one-stop shop for hockey fans throughout the hockey world. They could find all their latest information about their favorite team on this one website. So that's what illegalcurve.blogspot.com was before becoming illegalcurve.com.
So were you, at that point, was Richard producing his own content, or was it content literally you guys were finding and making, like you said, parking spot for third-party sources and articles? and
Combination of both. So Richard every morning would do something called the Illegal Curve Morning Papers, which still exists to this day in a slightly different format, but that title is still around. I mean, he would go around to all the different cities in the NHL and sort of find the relevant articles for all the teams and post them on the website so that people could click the link and find out whatever they wanted to find out about the New Jersey Devils, for example. And then I said to him, hey, great idea. How about, can I contribute some editorial articles, some opinion articles? And he said, sure. So that's what I did. I did a few of those. I mean, I don't remember how many of them I did. We can go back in the archives. The archives still exist.
That's great.
They're a little rough. I don't know that anybody wants to go back and read what I wrote, 15 years ago, but they still exist. And so, like I said, it was a very communal effort. Ezra did things. Dave did things. Yep. Everybody sort of did their part as we were just sort of trying to launch it. Mm-hmm. And, after maybe about a year or so of doing the website, we said, well, we need to add an audio component. That's when sort of podcasting was, I would say, in its origins. So on Sunday mornings, and this is going back on, way over 10 years ago, close probably to 13, 14 years ago now. On Sunday mornings, Ezra, myself, and Richard would drive to Red River College downtown.
Yep.
And we would go into their basement studios that Ezra had access to because he was a creative communications student at Red River.
Yep.
So we would go into the basement studios there and we would record podcasts. And it would be a combination of the three of us talking about whatever the news of the week was in the NHL, and then we'd conduct interviews as well, often with hockey journalists from around the hockey world who were familiar with us because of the website.
Okay.
So the website was sort of what gave us credibility. When we started the radio or the audio side of things, people knew about the website because they knew that their material was being sourced there, was being placed there, and credit given. We weren't we weren't taking the content and posting it. We were just providing links so that people could get the content at its original source.
Yep.
And so we would do these interviews, and we did them for a number of months. I can't really remember how many months it was, and it was always a little bit of a comedy of errors, given how how rough things were. But we would do them, and we got some samples. Let's say we had enough that we got a demo tape, for lack of better description. And after a while, we went to the Red River College at that point in time had a radio station, 92.9 Kick FM on the FM dial.
Okay.
And we went to the station manager and said, here is our demo. Here's what we're thinking. Give us an hour of airtime. And the station manager listened to it, and he heard us, and we did I think we did a couple dry runs maybe. I don't really remember. And he said, okay, I'll give you an hour. He gave us an hour on Wednesday nights.
Okay.
And it was great. I mean, and as this is happening, and as things are getting, this is, a year and a half, 2 years after we started the website and everything else, the buzz about the Jets coming back to Winnipeg was increasing. It was moving from a no chance to a faint chance, and sort of and obviously we know where it ended up today, given the team's been back here for a while. But things were progressing sort of behind the scenes, and so we were doing our radio show every week, and it expanded on Red River College. Eventually, it went from 1 hour to 2 hours, and we were able to get some pretty decent guests. Then we because. Again, we had credibility built in.
From the website
and everything else. We had some credibility, and we didn't treat it like a joke. We treated it seriously.
Like you would sit down and you would do the work, you would pre-prep, and you would set up, and you would program, and you would make sure you could fill that hour, eventually 2 hours. Absolutely. It wasn't just guys talking.
No.
It was.
I mean, it wasn't scripted, but we knew that at 7:15 on this Wednesday, we are going to be talking about topic X.
And just to confirm, none of you guys had sort of a formal background in any of this at that point, right?
The closest thing that any of us have to any professional training or or experience is Ezra through his creative communications. But Richard and I are just big mouths, I guess, and so we were able to fill the airtime just by talking. And I mean, all the old shows are still available, so you go back and you hear it, and they're pretty rough. Yeah. I'll be the first to admit it, and I hear myself and I cringe a little bit. I'm pretty sure the first ever show we didn't actually give our last names on air. I don't know if it was, we didn't know better.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just what it was. We didn't know better. Now, I mean, I think it started, I'm Drew, he's Richard, there's Ezra. I mean, who are these guys? But we worked at it and we kept doing it, and we kept doing reps, and as you keep doing reps and repetitions and everything else, you get a little bit better at it. So week after week after week after week, we would do all the prep work because we knew that properly preparing was sort of the key to everything.
Of course.
And we would just keep at it and do it week after week after week after week.
Content was king at that point, I'm assuming, to ensure that you had the proper material every single week to cover a new show. And so when people listened, it wasn't just the same old shtick. It wasn't just the same old, I've heard this already. It's the same. Yeah,
I mean, we would have to find whatever was relevant in that week, in the hockey world. And again, this is before the Jets a lot of the time. So, there weren't necessarily, nowadays everything's Jets.
Yeah, of course, it leads, right?
Back then, there was I guess this might be of interest to the audience. This might be of interest to the audience. So it was a little bit trickier to find what topics, the topic du jour that's going to be relevant to the audience at that point in time.
And you mentioned, obviously, and we're going back now probably 11, 12 years, and the Jets, I think, just hit their 10-year this year, obviously, that, at that point when you guys were on Kick and your show was starting to pick up a little bit of speed, there were some inklings, you said, of the Jets coming back. And something that I remember that you guys had, correct me if I'm wrong, on your website, was you had almost like a temperature dial or a gauge as to, the possibility of, I think it was first Phoenix possibly coming back here to Winnipeg, and then the switch to, I think you were one of the first to announce Atlanta or even bring Atlanta up, were you not?
Well, so there was that, and we didn't create that idea. There was a guy named Darren Ford who created that idea about the sort of the Jets meter, how close the team is, the return of the Jets, how close that was to coming. But we did, and this is where Dave Manouk sort of comes into the picture.
Okay.
There was a time there where we sort of had to put the website on hiatus. It got to be too much work. I mentioned Richard was in law school at this point in time, so unfortunately, the real life, sort of got in the way, and then. Again, as to your point, the radio show continued this entire time, even when the website went a little bit on hiatus. But as the events unfolded and as it became more and more apparent that there might be NHL hockey back in Winnipeg, we rebooted the website. And initially, we had I guess it was a daily segment called Drama in the Desert.
I remember
because
that.
The focus, of course, was Phoenix and the Coyotes. And I can't count the number of hours I spent watching Glendale, Arizona City Council meetings when they were debating. I mean, sitting there on my computer, and we used a technology back then called Cover It Live, where we would encourage all sorts of other people to, basically a chat room where we're all watching the city council meetings as they debate throwing good money after bad to keep the Phoenix Coyotes in their town. And eventually it became obvious that Phoenix wasn't going anywhere. And so, but Atlanta was the team that became the target. And so drama in the desert became drama in Dixie. Playing off the southern roots. But I mean, I think that's where, so that was sort of how the website sort of regained its footing here in Winnipeg as the reality of the NHL returning to Winnipeg became more and more clear. But before then, I mean, we transitioned from 92.9 Kick FM to what was then called Sports Radio 1290. And this is, I'm trying to think what year this would be. This would be 2009.
So this is before the Jets came.
So before the Jets came, 2010 maybe.
Okay.
2010 is what I'm going to go with for my final answer here. We sort of did we said two things. One, every NHL, every Canadian city that had an NHL market, had an NHL team, had an all sports radio station. And then we said, what radio station do we think would fit that bill? And we said we thought it would be then 1290 on the AM dial because they used to have they had a history of being an all sports radio station. Didn't last long, but they did have that. Sort of it was a national all sports radio station. And so we reached out to them, and this is in 2000 and this is probably 2009 initially. We reached out to them and said, we exist.
Exactly.
That's basically what it was, and they said, okay, thank you. And then I remember coming home from work on I want to say it was a Friday afternoon. And I went onto a website and I saw an article that said 1290 AM is transitioning to an all sports radio station. So I sent them another email, probably that afternoon, and said, we still exist. And they said, great. And long story short on this, within maybe 6 weeks, we were their first local programming on what was then Sports Radio 1290, which eventually became TSN Radio 1290. And this is before the Jets were back. This is still, this is 2010 still now, I think. And, we were, everything was very much in its origins. But there was a monumental interview that we we conducted with the Deputy Commissioner of the NHL, Bill Daly.
Bill Daly, yeah.
And so Bill Daly came on our show, and we were asking him largely questions about the potential for Winnipeg to get an NHL team. And I think we asked him about Atlanta at that point in time. And I remember the famous quote that he said is, basically he said, Atlanta's a problem because there's only one arena, and the arena isn't moving, and where it's located, nobody wants to go to games. And that was almost the tipping point.
That's when you knew.
That's when we knew. At that point in time, that's when all the momentum shifted to Atlanta, and then the snowball effect took many months, of course. And probably more than a year if I really think about it. But that's when it really became clear that the Atlanta Thrashers were at that point in time, the most likely team that was going to move back to Winnipeg.
So how do you guys, humble guys, how do you get Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly on your show to do that interview? Who set that up? Did you just cold call his office? Did you send an email, or
I can't say for certain, but I'm fairly confident in saying Richard probably reached out and sent an email. Again, we had credibility at this point in time.
So
because of the website, because we had proven ourselves that even though we didn't have the formal training, we took it seriously. Anytime anybody came on the radio show on Kick FM, they would have no idea that it was a college radio station. They would, because
the production level was that high.
The production level was high. Our professionalism was high. The questions we would ask were appropriate, respectful, journalistic, full of journalistic integrity. We sounded legitimate, and we were legitimate. It's not that we just sounded it; we were. And so that is sort of what that professionalism and that sort of being that being our mantra from the start. and our commitment to being prepared and being able to speak in an articulate manner about hockey is what sort of what gave us the backbone in order to stay around and keep on growing throughout our process.
And I also know, and I totally, I mean, you say that perfectly. I mean, I know that the professionalism you guys had from day one back at the Kick Days and onward have been top notch. And I know that's what tuned myself in. You know, my family, my father's been listening, you know, since day one. And I know a lot of people say that these guys, and they know hockey. They understand hockey at a level that you don't expect people to understand. But also something else that kept me coming back, and I'm sure also kept a lot of the members in our community and beyond coming back, is that you could really hear when you would listen to you guys the friendship that you guys have, and you also hear the love of hockey you guys shared. And something that I remember is just even your banter back and forth, you know, when you're coming back from commercials, when you're going out to commercials, there's really good banter that's even sometimes outside of the hockey world, the sports world, you guys would just banter for a couple minutes. That was great.
And that continues because we've been all good friends for decades. So that's the one thing you can't create is chemistry.
Yep.
Chemistry takes 10,000 years to develop, and that's what we have. So oftentimes people would say, that we wanted the show to sound like the conversations we were having off air. Same hockey conversations.
Yeah.
And that's just strictly a function of chemistry because lots of the conversations we would have, if we were sitting around watching a game, it would be the same conversation, and so we know what we can needle each other with, and so anybody that's listening to us knows that there's a friendship at its core here, and there's love for one another at its core here, and there's love for the game of hockey at its core here.
Yeah.
And so that is sort of again. It's helped us immensely in that we're always, that we don't have to work on the chemistry side of things because it's naturally ingrained in us. It's naturally ingrained in the program because this is basically what we would be doing. Well, not now. We don't have, when we didn't have families and everything, we'd be sitting around watching hockey all together as buddies. Now the only difference is we're on the radio doing it.
And but it's also pretty amazing. Like you said, you guys started as kids basically, no families, not married, and now you guys. I know all of you guys are married. I know you guys all have kids, and you're continuing though. That passion for the game, that love of hockey, and that friendship still shines through. But now the banter includes, let me tell you about my kids, let me tell you about my wife, let me tell you about the wedding, let me tell you about the honeymoon. And it's fun. And I know that the listeners really like that because they feel like they've kind of grown as hockey came back to Winnipeg, as, we've now hit year 10 with the Jets. I know a lot of, non-sports listeners starting listening to sports with your show, and they've grown up now as hockey fans, and you guys have been the voice now, sort of for those people, which is great.
Yeah, and it's when you put it that way, it's still hard for me to believe it.
I was going to say, do you ever find yourself sitting around saying, "Holy smokes! Like, look where we came from." Four buddies saying, "Let's just have a good time and try this out." I mean, I know now you guys, you usually go down to the draft every year, the NHL draft. You're broadcasting live from there. I know that you guys, you're on sometimes, when TSN was still around, you would be going on with whether it was, Kevin O or doing the after show or, when.
Yeah, I mean, month ago, how many weeks ago was it now, when Laine got traded? I mean...
You were jumped on for that, didn't you?
Well, it was Saturday morning, so it was fortuitous timing. And
there you go.
For whatever reason, it seems like everything seems to happen on Saturday mornings, which is our time slot, or it was our time slot on 1290. Now it is our time slot that we've transitioned to YouTube for the time being. And so we were on Saturday morning, so, Patrick Laine gets traded, where does everybody turn to? They turn to the radio.
100%.
And so what do they hear? They hear us talking about it. They hear us conducting the interviews about it. You flip on the tsn.ca website, and it's us. It's again, I'm sort of I'm desensitized to it because it's been happening for so many years now. But at a point in time, when my kids are older, or when they'll, I'll look back and say, that's we announced that the Jets were coming back.
Unbelievable! It's surreal.
We announced, I announced that Claude Noel.
I remember the Noel
was fired, was dismissed as Jets head coach.
To you about that.
I mean, it was a Sunday morning, and I remember I was lying in bed and I looked at my phone and I saw it on Twitter, and I got a call from the station manager because there was no programming on Sunday morning to speak of. He said, "How quickly can you get down there?" And I said, "Well, I can get down there in about 5 minutes." So 15 minutes later, boom, I'm breaking that news. That Claude Noel has been dismissed, and then my colleagues joined me in studio, and we're the ones giving the analysis about this happening. I mean, the Line A one was overwhelming. The number of sort of seismic occurrences and seismic shifts in hockey in this city that have happened just by happenstance, sort of under our watch is remarkable. And nothing will compare to the announcement. I remember the day vividly. I was playing softball. I try and relive my youth in the Jewish softball league. And I remember that we finished our softball game and I was driving home. And Stephen Brunt, then of the Globe and Mail, published his article saying, "It's official, Atlanta's coming back to Winnipeg." Well, I didn't stop at home. I went straight to the radio station, and we were on the radio station that night. Oh, gosh, I don't know what time we were on, till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, something like that, taking calls from everywhere. Anybody who was a Winnipegger or had a tie to Winnipeg.
Of course, they wanted to talk. And so we were on until 2 a.m., and then I think we were done, and then we were back on at 6 a.m. And again, these are all... What I never really appreciated is, and it's the remarkable the number of Winnipeg Jets fans and fans of Winnipeg the city that still sort of use the Jets as their tie to the city. When the radio station ceased being a couple weeks ago, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, the number of emails that we received from people not in Winnipeg, people that are outside of Winnipeg that either grew up in Winnipeg or their family did, or they have some sort of connection to Winnipeg, who sent us emails saying that it felt like a member of their family had passed away because the radio station doesn't exist anymore. What was remarkable, the litany of emails that I have on my phone, you sort of can't believe some of them, and the emotional ties that these people have to you and to the radio station, and the number of people who were so happy that we were continuing. And that we're not going away just because the radio station went away is really gives us a sort of another boost of energy and another driving force to keep the show going. So that's the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, Drew, is that, anybody who follows TSN 1290, and again, there's a ton of us out there in the city, as you mentioned, 2-3 weeks ago, it seemed like a light switch, CTV Bell Media, whoever it was, canceled TSN 1290. They switched programming, and I remember driving to work in the morning listening to the Big Show, and then driving home at lunch and hearing some weird radio song playing, wondering what's going on. And then obviously my phone lit up saying that this had happened. They made the announcement, and I also know in the game of radio, those types of things, they happen, and they need to happen suddenly and swiftly. So a lot of the time, their talent, yourself included, you find out abruptly, and it can be tough. I know with you guys, with the Legal Curve, and you've alluded to it a few times, that it doesn't mean that your show's over. It just means that you're going into sort of the next sort of reincarnation of who you are as the Illegal Curve show. And you mentioned obviously a YouTube channel, YouTube show, I think on the weekends, which is great. But I wanted to ask you, Drew, before we wrap up, how did you find out the news that the Illegal Curve show ceased to exist because TSN 1290 was cut off, and where are you guys going from there?
Sure. So I found out on Twitter, because that's how a professional organization always conducts their business. But I was at home, I was working, and I just want to, before I sort of get into that story, so we were less impacted than a lot of other people.
Of course.
Because we're independent contractors.
Okay.
We were not full-time employees of TSN Radio. And that's the way we wanted it. We wanted it because we value our independence. We are an independent sports media company. Illegal Curve Hockey is. And so, having that independence meant that we had a long-standing, very good working relationship with the people at TSN Radio, but we were not under their employ. We wanted that flexibility, and we provided them with the 3 hours of content every week, and they provided us in exchange with the airtime and with the production side of things. And so we had a very good relationship with them. But I do want to make it clear that for compared to those who were full-time employees, we were impacted a lot less. So what happened was I found out on Twitter. And that's obviously not the way you want it to find out.
Of course not.
And the only contact we've really had with anybody there is I got a text message from the then program director that night saying, I'm sure, basically saying sorry. He was also dismissed. So, I mean, he's not in, I didn't hold any grudge against him by any stretch of the imagination. Look, corporations are going to be corporations. Yeah. And sometimes it's as blunt as that. They treat people poorly. So be it. But from the day that it happened, I think it was a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was.
So 2.5 weeks ago, whatever it was, we said we were going to be on air on that Saturday.
Okay.
And so obviously we don't have a ton of technological know-how, but we knew that on that Saturday morning we needed to be broadcasting somehow, some way, so that the Winnipeg Jets audience gets their fill,
of course,
of Jets talk. And frankly, there's a market for it. And the number of people who spent their Saturday morning and spent last Saturday morning, and hopefully you'll spend this coming Saturday morning and Saturday mornings to come, on their computer, listening to our show via YouTube or subscribing to the show so you can get it in a podcast form. And we've been doing that for over 10 years. Is that if you miss the show when it's live, you can just subscribe to the podcast, the Legal Curve Hockey Show podcast, and you can have it on your device automatically each and every week. And so that we knew we needed to do that. And we did that on that Saturday, and people were there, and it almost was like I think a cathartic moment for a lot of people because they had spent that whole week dismayed at the absence of Jets talk and dismayed at the absence of morning. Yeah.
Good morning. No, it was like morning. I would be driving. I don't mean to cut you off, but I remember driving, and I mean, I didn't know what to tune my radio into.
Sure, it's part of your routine.
I didn't know where to listen, and I mean, that's where I would turn to TSN 1290. That's where I got my sports content. That's where I got everything, right? And I mean, between that and, I go online, but when you're driving in your car, you want to listen to local sports talk. And,
especially when the night before, whatever happened in the game, good or bad, you need an outlet for it. And that's why it was such a shame. I mean, look, this decision was made obviously not in Winnipeg. It was a decision that was made,
of course,
in Toronto, and whatever. I'm sure that they can save $100 doing it this way. Then that's the only bottom line that's driving it. But Illegal Curve is not going anywhere. That's the if there's anything that we've learned over the last 10 plus years is that we have a following. We've established ourselves in the Winnipeg community. I'll give credit to the Jets here. When 1290 ceased to exist, the Jets reached out to us and said, "Don't worry, you guys are still credentialed members of the media," which was classy of them. They don't need to do it, but again, for the last over a decade, almost 15 years, we've proven ourselves to be a fixture here in the Winnipeg sports landscape, and we have no reason that that's not going to continue. The show will continue. It'll be on YouTube. Search for Illegal Curve Hockey on YouTube. It'll be on there, Saturday morning, and you can tune in and you can get your fill of Jets talk. And like I said, subscribe to the podcast. And it's been a hell of a ride. It's been a wild ride, for over the past almost 15 years. But there's no reason why it's gonna cease to exist.
And let's kind of that's a great way to kind of leave it there. And it is. I mean, I know that probably in the next number of years we're going to see the Illegal Curve show continue to grow in whatever facet it takes. And I know that, our community is here to listen to you, beyond the Jewish community, the sports community, and because, again, you are online, I mean, I think your audience, and I know your audience is just going to continue to grow even further now, that much faster, because you are in this digital landscape, more so than you ever have before. I will tell our audience, those that are watching, that if you do want to subscribe to the Illegal Curve show and all that information, it can be found in the little blurb under this video. So that information will be there for you. So if you aren't already subscribing and watching Drew and Ezzy and their partners talk about this, and you continue to explore the depths of hockey in which they've been doing now for 15 years, I encourage you to do so. It's really an incredible story. 4 buddies from our Jewish community here in Winnipeg, getting together and just talking hockey, and it took you from, the basement basically to the press box and beyond. And it really is fascinating. And I know, going 20, 30, 40 years from now, if we can think that far ahead, it's crazy, right? But, there's going to be our kids who are coming up who are our age now, and they're going to talk about, the Illegal Curve show and when the Jets first came back and what that meant. And, 20, 30 years, whatever our radio landscape looks like locally on that point, hopefully there's another all sports, radio station of some sort. I know that the Illegal Curve show will be something that is talked about, and it'll probably be a marker. So when people start new shows on a local level, they use your show and the natural genesis of your show as kind of that marker there.
That's very nice of you to say, Zach. And yeah, we're the longest running sports radio show here in Manitoba right now, and that's a testament to us, myself, to Richard, to Dave, to Ezra. It's a testament, and if I don't mention them, I'm never going to hear the end of it. Testament to my wife Laura and her willingness and understanding that on Saturday morning I'm going to basically leave her for 3+ hours with our kids, Aaron and Sam, and same with Ezzy and his wife Naomi, and Dave and his partner, and it's just a function of. It's a show built around community. It's a show built around love for one another, love for our families, love for sports, love for the Winnipeg Jets, and like I said, it's going to continue unabated as far as we're concerned.
Well, Drew, I want to take a moment again to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come share, just a snippet of what you guys have done and where you guys are going. Please do pass along our thanks to your partners as well. Again, I want to take a moment to recognize our sponsors of the Familiar Faces series, the Asper Foundation and the Babs Asper Center for Cultural Arts. Again, without your leadership, programs like Familiar Faces would cease to exist right now. And thanks to you, we're able to have incredible stories shared, like the story that Drew just took time out of his day to share. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you're looking for more information about the Illegal Curve, if you want to tune in, if you want to watch, the information can be found below. Enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you guys next week.